Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Good morning, dear listener. And here we are, Kardec Radio Health and Spirituality program, every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Can you believe it? This year we're completing our 6th year. Yes, it's been 6 years nonstop every Saturday, wherever we are in the world, thanks to the technology of the current times. We love internet because it brings us so much good nourishment for the soul, so we can stand strong in the current times and forever. And today, what a special program, because we are going to dedicate to understanding more about the dynamics of a family, the dynamics of being a child, the dynamics of being a parent, and that special relationship which is so vital for the continuity of our life, and especially adulthood. And we have here an expert in the field, Barbara and Jaffe. And forgive, Barbara, later you tell me about the pronunciation if I'm mispronouncing. Beautiful name. And the website, Barbara and Jaffe, with 2 F's, JAFFE.com is the website. And I would recommend beautiful resources for people, book recommendations, beautiful blog, beautiful conversation, especially on these reflections about family, which is so vital, so important. She has a blog, and I tell you, I was reading the blog, Journey to Healing, and the title is already very invitational. It was written Sunday, January 15th, 2017. My sister-in-law. No, my sister. Beautiful. It's really what we're looking for in this world, this new paradigm of relationships. And she has a book that is just launched, When Will I Be Good Enough? How many people are still asking this question around the world? When will I be good enough? A replacement child's journey to healing. She talks about her own life, but she also gives and shares, as it says here, a book that helps everyone choose a different view of themselves. It's so vital for mental health. And Barbara, for those who want to know more about her, there's the website, BarbaraNJaffe.com, JAFFE. And she's a regular contributor to Psychology Today. She's an award-winning English professor at El Camino College, California, and a fellow at UCLA Department of Education. She has given countless workshops to help students find their writers' voices through writing nonfiction. She was honored the Outstanding Woman of the Year and Distinguished Teacher of the Year. And her wish for this book that she published, When Will I Be Good Enough?, is to help other replacement children understand and accept their offer, challenging journeys as she reviews her own, and to offer a cautionary tale to parents who have perhaps unwittingly set the stage in their own families for a child who serves as a replacement for another or is viewed as less than by comparison. Barbara also shares her inner journey in this book, which is beautiful. And she lives in Los Angeles with her husband, who is a psychiatrist. They raised together 3 sons, and they say an amazing grandson and an incredible dog. So the whole family there. Love it, Barbara. We're so honored and excited. Before I pass the word to Barbara, I would like to share with you that the series of studies we've done with the books Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel, and Good News by Umberto de Campos, and now Thought in Life by Emmanuel. They are ready at Kardec Radio's YouTube. Just go there, Kardec Radio channel at YouTube. Just go to the search bar, Kardec Radio, and you're going to find all the videos there. But if you want to study with us live, Kardec Radio's Facebook page, every day at 11 p.m., we're right there for you, building a beautiful community. We have every day people from South Africa, Australia, Brazil, United States, Canada, Germany, England, many other locations. Every day we're all together. It's an online community that gets together for this beautiful book club experience that is really changing lives, and especially nowadays with the current times being so challenging. We're there standing strong together to pray and always being positive. You know, it's worthwhile being positive. Now we're going to stream to you this beautiful message that we want you to listen with your heart open, to prepare the grounds for this new understanding about family relationships, what to do, and how to proceed when we feel we are not at the best of ourselves, either as parents or our children. Let me stream a beautiful message of joy and hope to us from the book and CD, Illuminating Messages, which you can find at the bookstore of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's website, ssbaltimore.org. After this, Barbara N. Jaffe is going to be here with us talking about her latest book and much more.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing sadness for others, even if everything appears to conspire against the happiness that you await. Lift your eyes to the smiling face of life that envelops you, and bolster joy wherever you go. Bless and serve always, even among tears. The rose, although subjugated by thorns, still offers its perfume, and sunrise awaits generously for the night to finish in order to renew itself. Daily, in a party of love and light.
Ready, dear listeners. I know we have listeners in more than 77 countries around the world, and you can listen to Kardec Radio now directly from KardecRadio.com. We're preparing an app to be released very soon for Apple and Android equipment, and also, we are merging both systems, Blog Talk Radio and the other system we've created, for your own benefit. So you can listen to the podcasts, and you can listen also to the very, very system that we've created here. So right now, I'm going to open the line to Barbara and Jeff. She's here with us, and she has been working, helping people around the world, and now she gave another step by publishing part of her own story, and she named it like a replacement child story. She's helping heal others around the world. So let us understand more about it and how important it is to really come to know of the reality of a replacement child. What is it, right? Hello, Barbara. Thank you so much for being with us here at Cardiac Radio today. How are you?
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you for inviting me and for your beautiful introduction. Before I start, I wanted to say that 2 days ago we have a new beautiful granddaughter, and her name is Rose. And I heard the introduction about the description of the flower of the rose, and it was so exciting to hear that. So I wanted to add that.
Thank you. What a so much emotion there, right?
Right.
So beautiful.
Absolutely.
A granddaughter.
So yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. And that feeling of welcoming when a child comes to life and the whole family getting together, it's so important. Preparation for parenting and having what we call like this family constellation. Everyone involved is so important. But we know not everybody goes through that pathway, and things happen in a different direction. So in your case, beautiful as the book, When Will I Be Good Enough? Not necessarily replacement children experience that, right? But what is
Absolutely.
a replacement child?
Well, the definition in the literal sense is a child that is born to replace another child in the family who has passed away. So it was not obviously expected that the child would pass away, and perhaps the family was complete. And then the parents have to make a decision to have another child in order to replace that child. In my case, I have an older brother who's almost 7 years older than I, and then Jeffrey, who passed away, and then I was born to replace Jeffrey.
And you wouldn't be born if Jeffrey were still here.
Right. So I never really grew up with the feeling that I was a replacement child, but my mother did mention throughout my childhood and life that she only wanted 2 children, and if Jeffrey had lived, I wouldn't have been born. So I guess subliminally the message was, that I was here because he died. And I always felt very sad for him, although, of course, I never met him.
But, the thing is, and, we're saying this with all the love and respect, because it's also, you're sharing your story, Barbara, to help others. Many people may be going through this and are completely unaware of the fact that this is something that is happening inside. So it's very unconscious or subconscious. It's there in the back burner of their system, and the effects are full force in their life, but they are not aware where it's coming from. So is that the main reason why you brought the story into this book?
Yes, I think
to let
first
people know that this exists?
Yes, absolutely. It's a relatively new phenomenon, even though I think the early research was in the 1960s regarding replacement children by Kane and Kane. 1964, they wrote a paper about the idea of a replacement child and the implications in personality traits. And more recently, Dr. Abigail Brenner has done research on replacement children. She published a book entitled Replacement Children, The Unconscious Script. Judy Mandel also wrote her story entitled Replacement Child. But there's very little literature out on that. And what's interesting is that someone I have worked with actually read some of my writing, and while he is not a replacement child, he could relate very easily because he was without a father. And in all of his roles, he assumed the role of being the protector and the father in many relationships. So even though he's not a replacement child, he could really see his own story through mine. And that's what I'm really hoping that my readers will get, because we're not all replacement children, obviously, but I think we can all see elements that are affected, maybe our self-confidence, our self-esteem, our self-worth.
I see. But, why do, from the parental perspective, in your experience or others, potentially, this may happen mainly because they don't go through what you call a healthy grieving process. Is that right?
Yes, I think specifically the time, in the 1950s, therapy, at least in my family of origin, was not looked upon very favorably. Today they have wonderful support groups for many different people related to loss. That was not the case in the 1950s for parents who've lost children. And the doctor literally paid my mother a house visit, and she was, of course, hysterical and just, in full grief. And he literally slapped her across the face and said, "Move on, have another child." And shared with me a little. She said that was my therapy, and I felt so sad for her. So very hard to move on when you haven't.
So. Each heart is like a parcel of spiritual land. Many will be buried by the stones of prejudice at the side of others who got entangled by the thorns of illusion, needing enormous time to break free. However, think about the good land not in use. This is where elements that generate inertia are found. Abandoned lands, orphaned lands, creatures who are anxious for the fertilizer of faith, souls who beg for a modest garden of hope and comfort. These troubled, forgotten lands will often look for you. Your vision will open up through the fatigue of the parents where pain manifests, tortures, and consumes, through the disillusionment of your sad fellows who carry in their hearts the ashes of their own dreams, through the problems of the child who is consumed by revolt, through the trials of your brothers and sisters who cry smiling so that you may not see the debris of their resentment. If you can already hear the sublime sower proclaiming, "Sow, sow," you know that charity is the sun that sweeps the shadows. You bring within you the gift to sprinkle comfort. You can pronounce the blessed word. You can pour what is left from the purse, transforming the coin in a prayer of joy. You have the strong arm which lifts up the fallen. Your fingers are capable of mending the strings broken by suffering in others' hearts, attuning them to the sound of the fraternal music. You have the privilege of sharing clothes you no longer need with those less fortunate. Nothing hinders you from helping the sick. Nobody prevents you from building in the road the good for those who are here and for those who are to come. Do not deter yourself in the emptiness of the shadows. Plant truth and light, joy and goodness. If you perceive the voice of the sublime sower, you will hear him at each step of the way, confidently saying closer to your ears, "Work while you can, and sow."
Yes, dear listener, and we apologize. We had a technical glitch, and we apologize to you, Barbara. We were so into your explanation. Something happened. We had to go through this break. So, Barbara, can you please, when you're talking about a healthy grieving process for a parent, especially the mother, can you tell us a little bit? You're talking about, for example, in the 50s, we didn't have therapy as we have nowadays, available to everybody as we have nowadays, right?
Right, and we don't. Today we have many amazing groups that, depending on your loss, that you can be part of. Children who've lost parents, parents who've lost children. That wasn't the case in the 1950s. And I also grew up in a family, perhaps a lot of us did, where we didn't necessarily talk about our feelings or share it with people outside of our family. And I think that was very, very hard for my mother especially. And so not that I think any parent can get over the loss of a child, but in a healthier sense, to be able to eventually move on and to realize that any subsequent children are not replacements. They're their own special, unique souls. And I think that could have been handled a little bit differently, but I know that my mother did the best she could.
Yeah, now you know. But the thing is this. We have a listener named Patty Kane who sent this question to us by email about the possible understanding of healthy grieving. Does it also include miscarriages, cases of miscarriages, of babies who were barely born and they died, like just born or right before being born? So would you say this problem also happens for parents, like not knowing how to grieve?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes in our society, people have a very difficult time talking about death, talking about loss, and sometimes not talking about it at all makes it very hard, because the person who's experienced the loss does need to process it, does need to talk about it. And it takes a lot of time, and everybody grieves in their own way. And I think we need to validate that, whether it is a miscarriage, whether it is a child born, a stillborn, no matter what. It's a tremendous loss. And nobody can really define for us what that loss means to us. We have to experience it and go through it ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting because could you tell there are symptoms, and I say this, quote unquote symptoms, but signs that a parent, a mom or a dad, is not going through a healthy grieving process
for
the loss
that
of a child?
I can speak from my own experience that my mother suffered profound depression. And that was, I guess, one of the results of not having been able to grieve and to really deal with it. I'm sure that she felt a lot of guilt, too, and that perhaps she could have done something to intervene before he got ill. And so I think this depression, it was like a dark cloud that carried her throughout her life. And at times it disappeared almost, and things were wonderful. But then when it came back, it would come back full force, depending on whatever was, the initial, which caused that. So I think in her case, and in many cases, that unless we deal with something, there's always this low level of sadness or depression or anxiety that can come out in different ways and manifest itself differently.
So that's interesting, Barbara, because is it possible the other end of spectrum too, somebody who denies it? So we know Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she wrote about the different phases that can come on and off, right? So sometimes people are in denial. They're like, okay, I didn't feel anything. Next child is coming in, and it's just like, I'm not feeling it, and that's okay. But there is a therapy named Systemic Family Constellation, and by Bert Hellinger, they talk about how important it is to include that family member in the family and say, he wasn't lost, so that's why he can never be replaced.
Yes, I think that is wonderful, and it would have been very helpful in our own family of origin. But that was not to be. So I am for me, it's very important to share my experiences and my emotions, even if it's just to be able to write about it. And that's exactly what I did in this book, although I never started to write about my story thinking it was going to be an entire book on a replacement child. I only wrote about the elements of my life that just seemed a little bit off, and I needed to put them out on paper and observe them, and in a sense taking myself apart and putting myself back together. and that's how I envision it. It's a tapestry, really, and when I was able to put myself back together, it's woven in quite a beautiful tapestry, far different than when I was looking at it in separate little issues on the paper. And I'm hoping that the readers will be able to see that, and in seeing my story, reflect about their own issues, because, as they say, an unexamined life is not worth living. And for me, to be able to be honest with myself about my strengths and my challenges just provides me with an ultimately very enriched life.
Thank you. And since we want to talk about the areas of your life that you feel were most affected by it, before we said that, I just want to bring one more case. I've heard of people and read also cases of people in which, like, they underwent abortion. I mean, the mothers had decided to commit abortion, and then later they feel that, the child that one day is born. I remember people coming to other therapists and saying, "Oh, I feel this child is potentially the one I aborted like 10 years ago." So it's a case of replacement child also through the doorways of abortion. I've heard many cases of the nature. Do you think it would be also fitting in the definition of replacement child as well?
I think so, and again, it's really how the parents view this new life and giving this new life the individuality that it deserves, and to acknowledge the loss, but to be able to also say that perhaps they could refocus it and say, this is a gift from the child that I did not have. This is a gift, but this new gift is a complete separate being. And I think that's important to acknowledge as well.
That's interesting. But what areas of your life were most affected by the circumstance that we're naming, like being a replacement child?
Well, some of the qualities that have been designated as a replacement child syndrome, based on the research that is out there, as I'd mentioned, by Dr. Brenner and Kane, are really that the child who is a replacement child, in a sense, does have some survivor guilt. Like, what did I do to cause my sibling to die that I am here? Some have depression. I don't, thankfully, have depression. Some have a feeling of perfectionism, of which I do. When I was growing up, I felt the need to do everything perfectly. Some experience low self-esteem, which has been my case, feeling less than, to be anxious a lot, which was something that I needed to work through too. Specifically, I think for me, I've had low self-esteem, low self-confidence, low self-worth, but it's somewhat ironic in that when I meet people and they see me, I often think that they see kind of a finished product, and they don't understand that those were things that I've dealt with. But it is something that I've been working on my entire life. It has not stopped me from having a wonderfully enriched life, but I am very open about the fact that for me, these have been my issues, and that sometimes what looks like I am the finished product, I've had to work so hard in the very many areas of my life to establish these as strengths.
And let me add one element here, Barbara, and feel free to dismiss it if you feel like this is not the case. But when reading your book, the story about, this replacement child, it came to me about something we discuss here at Cardiac Radio very often, about when families are put together, it's always for a reason, and then sometimes it's for the reason of reconciling with one another because of previous lives experiences, etc. Do you think, if that's the case for you, if not, feel free to dismiss, but do you think it's possible that sometimes this feeling to be attached to one child that was gone and not fully accepting another is related, potentially related to previous lives issues between the mother and the child?
So in your question, it would be a relationship that perhaps my mother had with Jeffrey, my brother that passed away in another life.
That, for example, in her case, I don't know. I'm not going to say about you, but let's say the child that was gone and then that left, like Jeffrey, she potentially had one relationship, and the new child that is coming in does not represent that relationship. Is a different type of relationship, a different soul. So still not embracing and accepting because she wanted to keep that relationship longer. Reincarnatory issues, we would
right.
say.
I do believe in past lives. I do believe in reincarnation. My mother never did. It was a conversation we would always have. And so from that perspective, I don't believe that she had any strong spiritual connection. However, I have always felt that Jeffrey is around me. I've always felt that ironically, in order for me to have the beautiful life I have, he had to pass away, that it was part of our connection, and that although I never met him, I feel like I've always known him. And I do agree with you that we are born into a family of origin that enables us to work through some of our spiritual issues and growths so we can move on to the perfect enlightened being that we often are meant to be. And in that sense, I completely believe that I was born into the exact family that I needed to be to work through the lessons that I needed to learn this lifetime. But I don't know that about my own mother.
That's beautiful. And you're saying that you feel the presence of Jeff as if he is the facilitator of this current experience in this life.
Absolutely. In fact, when I began to write the book, I wrote it in Jeffrey's voice. It was Jeffrey who wrote the book. And I started to write. I got to about through 10 pages and realized, because voice is so important to me as a writer and as a professor of writing, I could not sustain that voice. Even though he has been a part of me, I could not sustain it. It was a male voice that I was not familiar with. So I rewrote the book, but always Jeffrey has been an underlying foundation of the pages.
Oh, wow. I'm truly moved by what you're saying. My husband Carlos and I are here together listening to it, and I can feel tears rolling down my face, because this is really, really a beautiful testimony of the great love of being a family. It's amazing. Wow.
Thank you.
Very powerful. And it also mentions here that adopted children may be in this role without knowing. Even the parents don't know that they are doing that movement of replacement. And you mentioned about survivors of 9/11 and other situations. So how can people who are listening to us and are either adopting or being the adopted child come to realize whether or not they went through this experience and are still feeling the effects of being the replacement child? Because parents don't do this. Majority of the cases, they don't do this purposefully. It's something that just happens. It's more emotional than the rational telling them about this, right?
Exactly. I agree. I don't think parents intentionally do it. I mean, very few parents would actually, but there are parents who will compare in any family, perhaps without loss. They'll say, this sibling is the athletic one. This one is the educated, the one interested in school and very good at school. This is the artistic one. And I think in sometimes setting that up, we assume those roles. And personally, for myself, I assumed the role of being the perfect child. I did not want to cause any problems after what my mother went through. And I think that any loss that we have, as you had mentioned, 9/11, adopted children, half-siblings, I think that we have to acknowledge these losses or these changes in family dynamics and process it. And I am able to do that through my writing or through talking about it with someone. And I think sometimes these feelings of emotions are very uncomfortable for people to share. And I understand that because it's sometimes like opening Pandora's box. And once we open and share our feelings through writing, through talking, you can't put them back in the box in the same way. And sometimes you can never put them back in the box. And you can feel worse before you start to feel better. But again, I think it's all so essential for an enriched life to examine these pieces.
Exactly. So in this case, you would say, where do we begin the healing journey in this case?
I think first we have to be very aware and we have to accept. So first would be the awareness, to be able to say, I'm aware that this is who I am, and these are some of the challenges that I have and my strengths, and to accept them. And we all walk with something in our lives. And
but Barbara, forgive me for interrupting you, but
sure.
Being aware that you are a replacement child, for example, is not easy. And people have to go through the bridge of the ego to really allow it to say, yes, I recognize. How can they recognize? It's like signs that you are and that you are either going through or you went through that process that now we call like replacement child. How can they recognize it?
Well, I think it's just to be honest with ourselves. I went through I examined the pieces of my life. As I said, I was aware that things were a lot harder for me than seemingly other people, and doing very kind of normal life roles, marriage, jobs, motherhood. And so I kind of isolated the areas of the confidence that I had and my self-esteem and my self-worth when seemingly other people did not have those issues. And it was only when I examined those pieces that I thought perhaps it had something to do with having been a replacement child. I didn't start off by saying, because I'm a replacement child, these must be my issues. Not at all. It was really the other way around that I thought, wow, that's really interesting. This is something that I've dealt with. It doesn't seem that other people, like, for example, in my education, despite my advanced degrees, I've always felt that I'm really not that smart and that I'm just a really hard worker. And someone else might look and say, I don't see that at all in you. But that was my truth and my awareness that I had to work through. Because we all have different perceptions of ourselves, and for me it's very important to be honest and to put my ego aside. As you said, you had mentioned the ego. I think that's very important in order to live a very authentic life.
It's always that feeling of the title of your book, when will I be good enough? So would you, just for a practical reason for the listeners around the world, like how do I identify if I am in this case? First, they need to know the family history, because sometimes they don't even know that a mother had a miscarriage in between children or before they were born, or sometimes families keep secrets. So you need to know first, and to understand more of yourself in the history of your family. So you'd say, find out about the history of your family first.
I think that's a good idea. As much as you can about dynamics, that's right.
And then the second step would be like, do you feel that feeling sometimes in whatever area of your life, like, when will I be good enough? For people,
yes.
And it's probably a projection of this unconscious message that was absorbed in the parental relationship making you a replacement child?
Yes, I think that, and it can be in the same family. We can have different perspectives. My brother, my oldest brother, has a different perception, perhaps, of the way he was brought up, and did not have a lot of these same issues. So, not feeling good enough, even if we're not replacement children, some of us might feel, depending on our family of origin or depending on our life experiences, we may not feel good enough in a certain area of our lives. But that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And I think with constant work and reflection that we can overcome a lot of this, as I have. But I'm honest about the fact that these are my issues. And I think the first thing is to be able to say, yes, this is who I am. As I said, we all walk with something, but the beauty is to be able to work through it in this lifetime so we can be an enriched soul. That's how I see myself now.
I see.
But it takes daily work.
Yeah, and that's the part of the book, one of so beautiful, several parts of the book, because you talk in such an easy way. I want to read a few excerpts here, but before I do, I want to mention to the listener, because when you have in chapter 9, like the open doors, and and you have the therapeutic steps that you've taken and how you can change that inner script, the life script inside of you, right?
Right, exactly. Very important to, in my chapter 9, as you said, to be able to, what can we do to overcome a lot of this? And one of the things that I learned is to really rewrite our life scripts that do not serve us, to let go of the elements that we do not need anymore. For example, I don't have to be perfect. When I was growing up, that idea of perfectionism was something that I needed in order to live in my family of origin. But today, being a perfectionist does not really serve me. It's too hard to keep that up.
Yeah, and it's pointless because it's not going to happen, right? That's the point. I mean, it's not going to happen,
right.
So it's useless effort, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I've also accepted that expectations really are not helpful. I consider them to be planned disappointments.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I want to read a little bit. The last part is so sweet because you propose this interesting exercise 20 years from now. And I want just to tease the listener because it's so beautiful. Sometimes we feel so stuck, stagnated in these issues, the emotions, feel like we're imprisoned in this moment. And I feel the exercise you've given here in this very part 20 years from now is a way to catapult the person, say, wait, you can get yourself out of there. Think about this. And let me read just a few. Asking yourself this question can take several formats, but you can rewrite them so that they relate to your own challenges and decisions. 1, 20 years from now, what will be more important, my clean house or a visit with a friend? I love it. You know, it's so common. This is what, people are confused. Like, what do I do? Do I prioritize this or the other? And then you have a second question. 20 years from now, what will be more important, playing with my child or making dinner? Wow. That's a big one. I have a 3-year-old, and I tell you, it's so important to know how to answer this question.
Absolutely.
Right?
And these are all questions I've asked myself, so this isn't just something I've manifested to be able to put in the book. So many times because, I wanted to keep my house clean. I wanted to cook dinner. I wanted to do my work. And when my son would say, do you want to play a game? there was a part of me that said, well, I have all this to do. But then I thought, well, 20 years from now, will it really matter whether my table is set or my laundry is done? What will matter is the imprint of the fun that we had and the foundation of the love that we shared within the game. So it seemed very clear to me to say yes to that.
Yes, it's so beautiful. So would you say for those who are listening to us and want to read this book that it is possible to heal from this, let's call it a syndrome, the replacement child syndrome? Is it possible, really? Do you feel free?
Absolutely. Is it possible? Absolutely. And it's possible to have an amazing life the way I feel that my life is. But it's a lot of hard work, and it's the ability to examine ourselves and to accept that, okay, this is what we have, and let's work with it. And we can all have that. And we can all say, yes, I am enough, but I need to work through these elements in order to make myself enough.
And let me go back to one issue that I forgot. I remember talking to a friend about this interview that was coming up with you, and they said, but Vanessa, how do we make peace with that mother that we introjected, the father that we introject? Because the mother and the father nowadays, when we're adults, is one thing. They usually change a lot as we grow adults, hopefully. But the one we introject that is inside of us, that voice, that attitude, that interaction that is still living inside of us and defining the voice of our own selves about ourselves, do you think it's possible to change that part of us?
I do. I think
recorded?
Yes, I think that it's important that we have to be kind to ourselves. Sometimes I remind myself that, I want to be a very good friend to other people and kind and gentle. I need to do that with myself. I need to give myself a break. And I think that's very helpful. I also think that in terms of our own relationships with our family, that once you turn 18, you really can't blame your parents for anything. We are on our own in our own unique journeys. And as I said, we all have our strengths and challenges. We all think what, our parents could have done differently. But we have the opportunity from then on to be able to create the life that we want to live without being victims. And we as I said, we have to be very kind to ourselves too.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love each and every chapter. Even the titles, they are so invitational when you talk about 6 chapters, like slow reappearing and how you really make yourself be who you are. It's like a construction. Could you say like we're building ourselves? Because many people think they are a byproduct of life, as if they have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, so that when someone sees themselves as a byproduct of life, they see themselves as a victim, where other people are doing something to themselves. And I take complete responsibility for myself and the life that I want to have. Chapter 1 is a young girl who is slowly disappearing, and then you mentioned Chapter 6 is slowly reappearing, and that's really how I saw myself. And I have been able to work through all these things. It hasn't been easy, but it's been so enriching, and I think that that's really what life is all about, to have a full life in so many ways.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But we have to do the work, and we can.
And you say you can live a happier, serene life, right?
Absolutely.
Doing that,
we can have everything that we want. It's all within us, but we have to do the work, and we can. And I know if I can do it, anyone can do it. Absolutely. And all you need to do is to do it one day at a time.
Yeah. Many emotions surface when you go through this journey, right?
Yes, and when I would read the pages of my book, it was sometimes I almost felt like as if I was channeling an entity, whether it was Jeffrey or just the experience from almost spiritual, because I would be lost in my writing, and then suddenly I look at the clock and it'd be hours. Many emotions when I reread my own words. Sometimes I was crying, and I can't believe that I wrote what I wrote. And even then I had to tell myself, yes, just keep writing. I didn't know where it was going, but I just kept writing.
Yes. It's just a blessing because it's something that happens more often than we imagine. Of all the cases we've come across, it's so common and people barely recognize that this is something that exists. And once the power of awareness, as you said, once you're aware, you're empowered. And for us who have this spiritual facet to add to the picture, everything becomes ever more meaningful. And we can understand better, accept it, and go through it in a more whole way. As you say, you became whole once you gave yourself the opportunity to travel in this compassionate journey. Because I see the way you wrote about your mom was not blaming her. You learned to see her with compassionate eyes. Am I right?
Absolutely. I love her unconditionally, and I think she was a wonderful mother in many ways. It was just my journey to be able to see 100% of her strengths and challenges and my own, and never placing blame, but only an observation. And tremendous amount of gratitude also. As I said, we all have our journeys. This was my journey, and I have come through it very strongly, and I am continuing to do so. And in doing that, I'm hopeful that others will be able to examine their own journeys.
Mm-hmm. And just one last question before I ask you for a final comment, Barbara. And this is a little off script, but pertains to your understanding, because you said you understand and embrace this knowledge about many lives. Since many lives are opportunities for us to expand our consciousness, would you say that these opportunities you're given to be aware of these dynamics of the replacement child and heal from it, do you think you can see the reasons why you had, in your particular case, to go through this journey according to the many lives perspective?
Absolutely. I feel that one of the lessons that I needed to learn in this lifetime was to raise 3 amazing boys into wonderful men and to let them have their own lives, and to be able to do that through the lens of my own strengths and my own weaknesses. And I definitely feel that my feeling is I want to get it right in this lifetime so I don't have to keep coming back. And I really feel that I have worked tirelessly in trying to do just that. And while I'm doing it, to help others along the way. I do that through education. I do that for helping others find their writer's voice and to accept understanding and tolerance. And so I really do feel that this has been my journey, and I've addressed it as best as I can in a very positive and grateful way.
That's beautiful. Barbara, I cannot thank you enough I'm truly moved in the program today. It means a lot to us to have you here, bringing this very holistic perspective of our lives. We want to thank you for the courage of sharing your story and for, through your journey, promoting the opportunity for others to heal. And I want to ask you, thinking of the many listeners who are around the world and just realizing it, and they are now, whoa, what do I do now? What would you like to tell them to bring to them a little bit of consolation and hope?
Well, I think that all of us can have an amazing life. We have to reflect. We have to do our hard work. But we can have that enriched and joyful life. And I think that we can all know that there is meaning to our lives, that what we are experiencing we can work through. either by talking about it with someone else, writing about it, reading about another person's story, and that we are all similar within our differences, that we are all going through our own journeys. And the beauty is to be able to accept our journeys and to make the necessary changes in order to live a fulfilling, enriched life, and where we can help others along the way. And that's really what I'm hoping people will get when they read my book. Even though they may not be a replacement child, perhaps we have all felt less than in some areas of our lives as we take our journeys. And to know that we're really not doing it alone, because once we can talk and share our feelings, people realize, well, yeah, I've experienced that too. And there's such a wonderful feeling in that connection. And within that connection is a tremendous amount of growth.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Barbara. We want to be in touch with you. Whenever you have the next step going on, please let us know at Kardec Radio, because we would love to have you back here, okay?
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and I so appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this morning.
Thank you. So, dear listener, what a joy. We can be free. Yes, we can be free from these imprisonments, right? So it all begins with awareness. It begins with giving ourselves new opportunities. And go to the website, BarbaraAnnNJaffe.com, and get to know more about the book, the author, resources she shares with us, which is also very important, and her blog. Very beautiful, new understanding, and you see how beautiful life is. We have more and more people who are coming and sharing through their own missions new opportunities for all of us. You and I can have this single opportunity of freeing ourselves just by staying strong together. Yes, and this is not a political statement, by the way. It's just a way for us to feel together. We're always stronger together. Right now, we're going to invite you for the final moment. It's a moment in which we express our gratitude. I'm very grateful that Carlos is here with us, because our friends Carrie and Mark are playing with Virginia, and Carlos and I can have an opportunity to be together with this program, and Barbara and Jeff with us. And God bless Jeffrey and Barbara's mom and father and the whole family for giving us this opportunity of realizing that life is much more than we imagine. Let us open our hearts. Feel the presence. Feel the presence of our connector, the sustainer of life, God. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, for the opportunity of existing and being this incarnation. Again and again, living and learning to love and to serve, recognizing the divine in everyone, appreciating it inside of us and around us. We want to pray for new hope for all the children and the adults around the world who are feeling as if they are replacing somebody else. May this prayer be a loving message to their hearts, telling them you are unique. You came to this life for something very special. We also want to pray for the new president, his cabinet, and everyone, irrespective of our political views, hoping that this prayer embraces them with great awareness, making them feel the responsibility and the courage to help people around the world through unity, through compassion, because they are also divine. We trust in you, dear Lord of life, that you know the best for all of us. Please secure love on the earth as it already is in heaven. And so be it. Dear listener, here we are. In a week from today, we have a special program. We're just reinventing here what's going to happen next week, but something really beautiful. But in between, you have many options. New programs every day, from Cardiac Radio for Kids to Cardiac Radio for Kids. We also have Sex and Destiny, the novel that is read by Mackenzie Mello and Francisca Kranz. We also have Thursday Spiritist and Medical Spiritist Talks every Thursday. Friday Spiritist Awareness with hosts from around the world. Saturdays Health and Spirituality here with us. And finally Sunday Spiritism and the Spirits in the World around with Brian Foster. And you know, Cardiac Radio now has 2 channels at TuneIn Radio, the app. And you can go there and listen to the podcast and also to the live stream or cardiacradio.com. Until we have our own app very soon, we're going to release it. Thanks to the effort of loving friends, we're putting it together so we have our own app and you can interact with us directly. Meanwhile, cardiacradio@gmail.com is your venue of communication, or Cardiac Radio in its page on Facebook. Meanwhile, rejoice, because joy is the word of the day. We're going to wrap up with this message, and until next Saturday.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing